What's up everybody, we back at it again with another Magnum Quest video, and in this one I finally got around to updating my tier list. Well, tier list, as you're going to be seeing here in this video. I'm pretty excited. I organized it, I updated the visuals, everything seems to be easier to understand. Let's get this show started and let's get it. As always, timestamps will be available in the video description if you want to jump ahead to a specific stage in the game that you're in, and links if you want to download the tier list images. Now I had some comments regarding the original one, which you're going to see on the screen right here. There was too much going on. I had letter rankings on the hero icons for early game and boss rankings. It wasn't very clear besides the text at the top what stage of the game this was for. I agree, looking back on this, it wasn't very appealing. 5 out of 10, let's try this again. Personally for me, I don't like tier list videos when they simply just open up a tier maker on the website and throw hero icons into each tier and talk without showing any visuals. So we're going to swipe this one off the screen and replace it with my first tier list image. It's going to be a long video, I already know this, if anyone stays all the way to the end, I appreciate it because I do put a lot of effort into these types of videos. I'll do my best to make it entertaining when I can. So right here, as you can see, it's labeled for early game. I decided to make early game chapters 1 to 16 because after this, the game takes a change and your heroes you may have been using before this start to switch up, at least it did for me. So right here, as you can see, I have the OP tier at the side. Early game carry heroes at this very moment are Gaia and Winden. Some may wonder why Ion is not OP. Well, to be truthful, on my third account when I was Winden DPS focused, and a little bit on my second account, I barely used Ion for these chapters. Now she does become OP, I'll tell you that right now, but it was only situationally where I would use her early on, all the way up to at least chapter 17. I'm going to be deep diving into the OP heroes and then briefly describe each tier. So clicking on Gaia here, one of the goats, literally. The reason if you're a new player why she's so OP is because paired up specifically with Fair. Just remember, Fair is essential to maximize her damage potential. You can see here Fair pulls in the enemies and Gaia is able to use her auto attacks, which then turn into AoE, which means area damage. It's a very simple strategy, group up the enemies and then have Gaia melt them. Her ultimate gives a haste plus attack buff. Haste is the most important stat in this game, I've said it many times, so to have access to this early on is huge. You're going to want to get her to gold 3 ASAP and level 200. This is the max for a silver to gold hero. All 3 of her skills are very solid. Lucky Strike, which I haven't mentioned yet, deals more damage based off Gaia's max HP, so getting her ascended quickly and leveled up boosts those stats, bringing in more damage. The typical setup I'd run would be Fair. Your choice here could be Ares, Arthur, Harry, basically a tank. Then you would have Gaia, Sir, Phi, or if you're struggling with survivability, swap in Ion. If you're still struggling, replace Sir maybe for Oshishi if you need some more CC lockdown. Clicking on the other DPS carry Winden, this is the other option. This beautifully bearded wizard you can choose to utilize as an OP hero early on. However, he needs to be paired up specifically with Cinia. Just remember this as it's essential to maximize his damage potential because his energy buildup is some of the worst, if not the worst in the game. And because you won't have access to runes, I think you get it around 1440, I could be wrong. You need her, so like Gaia, he also needs a specific hero to shine. Basically, as you can see here, Cinia will use her ultimate to give energy to her surrounding allies. If you position her in either corner side pocket with Winden in the middle, depending on your setup, but in this example, I place Cinia behind whoever Lycidas is going to teleport into the enemy team, all that energy is going to go to Winden, allowing him to get multiple ultimates off very quickly. It's honestly the most fun I've had in this game is watching this happen. He also has support buff skills that boost his attack of all intel heroes, and one that boosts the hero with the highest attack with critical chance and critical damage. The typical setup I'd run would be Lycidas, Arthur or Alden, then Sir, Winden, and Cinia. I have this positioning specifically like this to give Winden the most energy. His survivability is an issue. You can swap out Sir for Ion, but then you're going to be losing those aura bonuses. Now let's chat briefly about the different tiers and their grouping. Since the heroes here will be just rearranged depending on early, mid, or late game, I won't need to go over them again as I move through the stages of the game with these lists. So S tier, referring to often used heroes, are as followed. Sir, even at 1 copy, which you can easily get from code MQ123, however it is expiring soon at the end of this year, so use it up if you haven't, is very tanky. I use her a lot on multiple accounts to tank the enemy Carlotta stages. Keep in mind though, once she starts her ultimate, she loses her Unyielding Wings tough skin effect, which makes her take reduced damage, as it's only during her original state. So her ultimate puts her into Awakened state, essentially more damage but less survivability. Fair, plain and simple, as you saw in the video clip when speaking about Gaia, his job plain and simple is to pull enemies in with his Fatal Attraction skill so Gaia can make quick work of them. Make sure to have his ultimate on manual, meaning clicking this off, because if he uses this, he knocks back those enemies he just pulled in, which is doing the opposite of what you need him for. It is helpful to use as a form of CC, which is crowd control, to interrupt enemy spellcasting such as Durla's ultimate, Arthur's shields, or even Alden's ultimate. I'm sure by now you know these other heroes' main purposes, but just in case you're a new player, Alwyn, top heals, and her Bewitch skill can come in clutch in certain fights. Ione, she really starts to shine once she gets her revival shield skill, Vines to the rescue, seen here, but I don't think she's necessary early on. Fi, he really starts to shine as soon as he gets his haste buff for your team at the beginning of the battle, which is his scurry skill, seen here. It eventually does add energy. Honestly, that's what he's only good for a very, very long time. You won't really see his damage output much until you have star map investment, and even then, probably around gold tier is needed. On occasion, you can use his ultimate to interrupt enemy spellcasting as well. Ares, pre-level 201, he walks, he spins, he dies. I suggest only using him as a dollar store sponge. Till then, as his survivability is really bad. Now I have Cinia in S tier, but this is only if you're utilizing the Winden as your main DPS focus, instead of the typical Gaia. Otherwise, for this stage of the game, I would consider her A tier. She's an energy battery, supporting heroes with energy, buffing the backline heroes at the start with energy. She gives them an ability to block an attack, meaning can block enemy Fair's pull, and also the tough skin effect, so they take reduced damage. She also buffs the 2 highest attack allies with more attack. In that case, it's going to be your Winden. She's also very useful in the Awakened Demons. Durla works as well depending on your summon luck. However, due to not having access to runes till later in the chapters, like Winden, suffers heavily from energy buildup for her ultimate. Moving down to the A tier, referring to the situational heroes, they are as followed. So for Alden, he has freeze effects, which come in very handy. Lycidas, aka Dracula, depending on the setup you're running, might be good here, but I don't think I utilized him early on. You can teleport maybe like Arthur, Alden, or Harry, but I do think you're going to need Ione, otherwise they're just going to die instantly, but Alden does seem to survive a lot easier without her. Cyan's simply here to bypass enemy Fair's pull skill, but if he can survive long enough, he can use his ultimate to interrupt enemy spellcasting. So for Arthur, his shield isn't great at the beginning, but still might be just enough to get you that battle win. I mostly would keep him around for the Awakened Demons, hovering around a 3-star ascension for survivability purposes. So for Harry, he's not so much needed early on because I find the fights to be over rather quickly before even utilizing his ultimate. I mostly used him for bosses. Ekro works depending on your summon luck as a DPSer till you eventually transfer over to Gaia or Winden. I know players who do their own thing during the Ares pre-level 201 phase, but those 2 heroes I found work great. Moshishi, even at 1 copy, you can utilize her right off the start. Her CC crowd control is the best. She has AoE sleep, immobilizing a highest attack enemy, plus buffing your highest attack heroes with haste. The reason I have her in this tier is because, well, like Harry, I find the stages end so quickly, but she is useful for tough ones requiring CC. So for the B tier, potential, and then for the C tier, rarely used. I won't go over these ones as honestly I don't have much experience with some of the heroes in here, but you can take a peek at those heroes except for these 3 that I'm just about to mention, because I haven't done anything with them in my previous tier lists, and they are as followed. We have Lilian, Ilya, and then Fabian. So for Lilian, when she was first introduced, when I read over her skill kit, I thought I might be utilizing her more, but I think she's better fit like in the early on in the game, referring to chapter adventure. I find what she does is just too slow to be used at the late game, and it's very hard to replace the core heroes that I'll be getting into. Definitely a very strong healer, and has a unique way of doing so, as she targets the hero who is furthest away to focus her heals on. Which to me is one of the reasons why I just didn't utilize her much. I can see her being better suited in a setup with Lycidas, so you can dictate which hero is essentially healed when he throws them into the enemies. I have seen players use DPSers like Fang to boost their survivability, especially in the Fortress Dungeon, but I don't know. For me, she was just more B tier worthy. She has potential, but I just never spent the time using her. Comment down below your thoughts about this hero, as I know she was released quite some time ago. Then moving over to Ilya, I definitely feel like he's more beneficial than Lilian. Once again, I feel like he's more suited on earlier on in the game, referring to chapter adventure. It looks like to me he shines mostly in PvP or faction dungeon due to his disruption. His first blood skill, as the battle begins, he charges right ahead at the closest enemy, so with specific placement, he can be used to knock back enemy heroes like Gila, Ares, Fair, etc. And then his ultimate also causes disruption by charging to the enemy with the highest attack, so essentially he can be charging from one side to the other side, knocking around enemies in the way. I used him more frequently in the Fortress dungeon, as frontline options for me seem to be lacking. You have enough DPS with your typical backline heroes like Ekra and Winden, but it's the survivability portion to buy enough time to be able to do that, and I think Ilya does a good job at doing so. Comment down below your thoughts about this hero as well, because I never spoke about him or Lilian. And then finally, Fabian. Alright, so Fabian, I think this is the saltiest I've ever been in this game. When I looked at his skills, his attack values, I had high hopes for him. I went all in on him, I got him to legendary right off the bat. And then I was just very disappointed. Don't get me wrong, he can put up some high boss numbers, some of the best. I will be making a video on that soon, but his survivability is just so brutal. I could just not get him to survive long enough to do the DPS I wanted. It's honestly worse than Hista. Hista's bad, but with star map investment sees a noticeable difference. Fabian, on the other hand, only has his dodge skill, and it's just very underwhelming. I find he can build up his ferocity stacks quite fast, so his damage ramps up at a nice pace. He can hit very hard, maybe not as hard as I initially thought, but it's still good. His skill Sleek Fur regarding his dodge that I just mentioned, it's just bad. I mean, it doesn't seem to do anything, he still dies way too fast. Although I consider him basically only a boss DPSer, I think he can still serve purpose in maybe PvP with Ion because he ignores defense so he can melt those tanks. One thing to note here is you may be utilizing the heroes ranked high in this list or you may not. Either way, it's your decision and how you want to play the game. That's the biggest part for me when playing games, doing it in a way that's fun for me, otherwise I'm just going to get bored. The heroes in the tiers above are just the more popular heroes that will just make your time easier that I've found. So I actually misjudged just how long this video was going to be. I don't want this being over 20 minutes, so I'm going to divide this into 3 parts, maybe 2, depends on the length. Part 1, which is what you just watched, this is early game and a quick rundown of how this is going to be set up. Part 2 will be the mid game and possibly the late game, depending on the length. If needed, part 3 will be the late game. As always, thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for future videos, and stay tuned for the next part.